Hi, very good morning. I'm Dr. Janak Patel, MD, General Physician. Today we'll be discussing on one of the another topic related to pericardial disease, that is constrictive pericarditis. Majority of the part we have already discussed before. It is very simple that you start getting constriction around the heart because of pericarditis. So whenever pericarditis which heals by fibrosis, it will result into constrictive pericarditis. The most common cause of constrictive pericarditis is tuberculosis and malignancy. That comes topmost on the list. Same we'll be discussing under the common heading definition, etiology, pathophysiology, clinical features, investigations, differential diagnosis, treatment and complications. You know very well the fibrosis will take place or healing will take place long time. So usually pericarditis which is for a longer period will be having a chance for healing and can heal by fibrosis. So constrictive pericarditis is usually a chronic process, and being a chronic process it is always also called as a chronic pericarditis. But in a chronic, when it heals by fibrosis, we call as a constrictive pericarditis. So it is a fibrosis in the pericardium resulting into restriction of the expansion of the cardiac chamber. It is called constrictive pericarditis. Also some terminology they utilize chronic constrictive pericarditis, means it is a chronic inflammatory process which involves both fibrosis of fibrous and serous layer. Fibrous is the parietal layer and serous is a visceral layer, and that leads to pericardial thickening and compression, that is constriction of the ventricle, which results in impaired in diastolic filling, which reduces the cardiac output. That is called constrictive pericarditis. So it is an end stage of inflammatory process involving the pericardium. There is a restricted diastolic filling of the heart because of a fibrotic process in the pericardium. There is a thickening and adherent of the pericardium. The visceral pericardium is firmly attached to myocardium, and that is thickened, and good number of time it is calcified. Very commonly it is calcified in tuberculosis. Visceral and parietal pericardium has almost become adherent. There is obliteration of pericardial space. In some cases, the constriction process is formed by the visceral pericardium, and that is we call epicardium alone. And calcium deposition is very common. We have already told you in case of tuberculosis. Usually there are three similar conditions which can produce a pericardial compressive syndrome. That is cardiac tamponade, where there is a rapid accumulation of a pericardial fluid producing increased pressure in intrapericardial sac, or because of a large quantity of fluid accumulation. At present, we have already discussed constrictive pericarditis. It is because of scarring of pericardial sac involving visceral as well as parietal pericardium. And there is one variety where there is effusive constrictive pericarditis, which is characterized by constrictive element as well as coexisting pericardial effusion. Usually, it will end up into cardiac tamponade. Etiology, we have already mentioned the most common etiology in India is tuberculosis, quite common. Bacterial and purulent, or we call bacterial pericardial effusion, another common. But if you see here, there is one group where we cannot identify the cause. Almost it is accounting for 50%. Post cardiac surgery, particularly any surgery which is done on a pericardium, will lead to fibrosis almost in 37%, up to 37%. Post radiation, which is very commonly in a female with CA breast, bronchogenic carcinoma, radiotherapy, or we can call as person who has been given radiotherapy for esophageal carcinoma, etc. Collagen disorders, or we call connective tissue disorders, not very common, but 3 to 7%, and post-infectious is 3 to 6%, but we see tuberculosis as very, very common. This particular group may be viral or may be idiopathic. It is accounting for 42 to 49%. Because when you rule out all these conditions, then we label that as idiopathic or post-viral. Viral is usually less common, which will lead to fibrosis. Malignancy is another common group which can go up to 10%. Trauma, other diseases like asbestosis, sarcoidosis, drug-induced uremia, not very common, but malignancy stands topmost on the list. So idiopathic comes topmost on the list: irradiation, post-surgical, infectious, and neoplastic. Connective tissue disorders. These are the most common causes, while uremia, trauma, sarcoidosis, methysergide, implant like defibrillator patches, etc. Not very common. Hello? Huh? 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 Hmm. Huh? Hmm. હા તો એમનું એક સીટી સ્કેન મોકલાવી દે. હા 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 ઓકે. So as far as pathophysiology is concerned, there is a fibrous scarring or with calcification very commonly seen in tuberculosis, where visceral and parietal layer get adherent and it does not allow the ventricle to relax during diastole, because pericardium is rigid and it is compressing from outside, hence feeling during diastole is poor. So cardiac output is markedly reduced and that will produce hypotension. Also because there is a compression of the atrial chamber also, so veins are also obstructed and that will result into increased venous pressure in superior vena cava and inferior vena cava. It can be demonstrable by CT scan that pericardium can be thickened as much as 5 millimeter, and there is scarring, there is a loss of elasticity that can be easily seen by different investigations. So in acute and subacute pericarditis, there is a deposit of fibrin material secondary due to pericardial effusion. It undergoes fibrosis, scarring and calcification. So visceral and parietal pericardium become inflamed, thickened and fused, and that will result into obliteration of pericardial space, and ventricle will lose its relaxation, will not be allowed to relax during diastole. So the feeling is not proper. So marked elevation of atrial pressure and end systolic volume will be markedly reduced. Early diastolic ventricular suction will take place. Abnormal rapid filling of the ventricle in an early diastole. Intracardiac volume will reach because of stiff pericardium. Early to mid diastole ventricular filling is poor, and because of that the filling will occur only mainly in early diastole. Cardiac output will be markedly reduced. The clinical symptoms are mainly because of decrease in cardiac output. Early diastolic filling and pressure is elevated. Diastolic pressure in all chambers is almost nearly equal. So there is a restriction in a late diastolic filling, venous engorgement, decreased cardiac output, all secondary because of compression from outside. So because of decreased diastolic filling, you will have a decreased systolic volume, decreased cardiac output, hypotension and shock stage, and secondary to hypotension, reflex tachycardia. Increase in venous pressure, effect on systemic, increased JVP, hepatomegaly, ascites, peripheral edema, pulmonary congestion, and there will be RALs, or we call basal crackles. So JVP is elevated because of constrictive pericarditis, pulse will be elevated, JVP will be elevated, A wave and V wave will almost become equal, X descent will be prominent, Y descent will be rapid, and you will have a Kussmaul sign positive, which will be very classical seen in a JVP. Usually it is very difficult to make out all these things on clinical examination. It is usually by on a Doppler recording, which you can do. So during inspiration and expiration, during inspiration, the flow to both the chamber is equal. And during inspiration also, flow is equal on both the chamber. But in presence of what we call as constrictive pericarditis, there is a restriction of the ventricle to relax, because here if you see during inspiration the flow to the right side is more as compared to left side. Hence, if a person has got restriction of a ventricular relaxation, you can see during expiration there will be increase return to ALA and from ALA to LV, while during inspiration there will be increased blood flow from RA to RV, and there will be decrease in filling of LV, because there will be decreased flow from LA because of distension of RA and RV. So LV chamber will be reduced. This will also produce what we call classical pulsus paradoxus. I am skipping over all this. In clinical features, person will have a exercise intolerance, dyspnea on exertion, fatigue, anorexia, weight loss because of decreased appetite, edema, ascites. JVP will be elevated with Kussmaul sign, enlarged liver and spleen because of increased venous pressure in superior vena cava and inferior vena cava. ECG will show you inverted T wave and atrial fibrillation. You can see elevated JVP, peripheral edema, ascites, hepatomegaly, pleural effusion. S3 may be audible, pulsus paradoxus, Kussmaul signs, and cachexia. These are some of the common findings which you can see. In JVP, X descent and Y descent, it is described as M and W. There will be Kussmaul signs almost in 96 and 94%. You can hear a pericardial knock almost in 70% of the people. The apical impulse is nearly absent or decreased. It is very difficult to palpate. Even sometimes the heart sounds are feeble. Ascites and hepatomegaly, splenomegaly will be very common. Peripheral edema, tachycardia, pulsus paradoxus are other findings. In 67% of constrictive pericarditis, there is a symptom signs of heart failure. 8% will have a chest pain, 6% will have abdominal symptom, 4% will have atrial arrhythmia like atrial flutter fibrillation, and 5% may present as a cardiac tamponade. Particularly, it is more common with cardioeffusive or constrictive effusive pericarditis. Little difference between tamponade and constriction we have already discussed when we have shown you the slide in cardiac tamponade. Paradoxical pulse will be classical in case of tamponade, may be present in case of constrictive pericarditis. Right side and left side pressure is equal in both in cardiac tamponade as well as constrictive pericarditis. There is absent Y descent in tamponade while there is a classical Y descent. It is described as M or Y shape in constrictive pericarditis. During inspiration, the venous pressure, systemic venous pressure decreases. While in constrictive pericarditis, you will get classical Kussmaul signs. Usually venous pressure will increase, while here it will decrease. That is called square root sign in ventricular pressure, which will be classical in case of a constrictive pericarditis, and it will be absent in case of cardiac tamponade. Again, same type of a difference, which three varieties: effusive constrictive, constrictive pericarditis, and cardiac tamponade. If you are interested, at your leisure time, you can go through. I am putting this slide. I have already mentioned that in a tamponade, there is a low cardiac output, JVP is elevated, there is no Kussmaul sign, while Kussmaul sign is present in constrictive pericarditis. Diastolic pressure is equal in both. In right atrial chamber, there is no Y descent, while there is a rapid Y descent, very classical seen in a constrictive pericarditis. In cardiac tamponade, the heart sounds are feeble or it is difficult to auscultate. While in case of constrictive pericarditis, very frequently you hear a knocking sound we call pericardial knock. Pulsus paradoxus is classically present in cardiac tamponade while it is absent in case of constrictive pericarditis. Pericardiocentesis will be a treatment in case of a cardiac tamponade while pericardial stripping is for constrictive pericarditis. There is a large effusion or intrapericardial pressure is markedly elevated in cardiac tamponade while there is no effusion in case of constrictive pericarditis unless it is constrictive effusive pericarditis in which there may be little amount of effusion. And there will be marked pericardial thickening and calcification which will be very commonly seen in a constrictive pericarditis. Diastolic knock is more common in chronic variety, Kussmaul signs is more common in chronic variety, and paradoxical pulse will be seen in both subacute as well as chronic variety. ECG in constrictive pericarditis is rarely normal. Usually it will show you atrial arrhythmias, particularly atrial fibrillation, quite common. Very frequently it is low voltage and you might see sometime little element of left atrial enlargement. In X-ray chest there will be pulmonary venous congestion and bilateral pleural effusion may be seen. Very frequently you will see calcification of pericardium. Very commonly it is seen in tuberculosis and it is suggestive of a chronic constrictive pericarditis, very classical of constrictive pericarditis. 2D echo if it is done, you will see RV chamber and left LV chamber is almost equal. LA and right atrial enlargement will be seen. There will be abnormal septal movements during inspiration as well as expiration. Paradoxical septal movement will be seen, as well as there will be dilated inferior vena cava without respiratory variation because of increased venous pressure. Hepatic vein will be dilated, pulmonary venous congestion will be there, as well as mitral inflow pattern will be decreased during diastole. This will be all diastolic feeling, diastolic, or we call Doppler findings. Hemodynamic changes, I am not going into detail. This is a difference between constrictive pericarditis and restrictive pericarditis, or we call restrictive cardiomyopathy, quite common. So I am not going into detail. If you are interested, you can go through one or two points I'll mention. In constrictive pericarditis, pericardial knock is very, very commonly present. Paradoxical pulse may be present. Usually there is a negative Y descent or prominent Y descent, which is quite common in constrictive pericarditis. Right side and left side filling pressure are present and almost equal. Almost equal. Square root sign is present in case of a constrictive pericarditis. It is described as square root findings. Respiratory variation will be seen and it will be exaggerated. So we say Kussmaul signs will be positive. So that is very common. You will see ventricular wall thickness will be normal, but pericardial thickening will be markedly increased, which will not be seen in a restrictive pericarditis. These are some of the major difference in constrictive pericarditis. So traditionally, constrictive pericarditis and restrictive cardiomyopathy, this is a little difference in hemodynamic criteria. This is again a major difference between restrictive cardiomyopathy and constrictive pericarditis. In detail, it is given physical examination, ECG finding, echocardiography, Doppler, cardiac catheterization, CT, endomyocardial biopsy, etc. If you are interested, you can go through at your leisure time. It is tremendously in detail, so I am not going through that. Same thing mentioned here, physical, ECG, echo, cardiac cath, endomyocardial biopsy, CT scan, etc. This is, so I'm putting this slide. You can go through your leisure time, have a pause, and you can go through your leisure time. This is difference between dilated cardiomyopathy, restrictive cardiomyopathy, endomyocardial fibrosis, cardiac tamponade, and constrictive pericarditis. Again, difference as far as JVP is given. In detail, it is given. You may not, if you are interested, you can go through. This is what is being done. Usually, very commonly, we call as a balloon pericardiotomy in a case of a pericardial effusion. Very commonly, you create a small opening in a pericardial sac. For diagnosis of constrictive pericarditis, echocardiography, ECG, X-ray chest, hemodynamic study, CT and MRI are necessary, out of which the most easiest way is by echocardiography, very, very easy. On an X-ray chest, you can see calcification, quite common, and pulmonary congestion. In detail, if you want to differentiate between different groups like restrictive cardiomyopathy and constrictive pericarditis, you will need a hemodynamic studies. CT and MRI can be useful. But most important is, most simple investigation at bedside is echocardiography, where you will see marked thickening of the pericardium and even you can demonstrate pericardial calcification. There will be a septal bounce, means shifting of the interventricular septum will be seen. Premature pulmonary valve opening can be seen. Exaggerated septal shifting during respiratory, that is during inspiration and expiration. And transesophageal echocardiography is better than transthoracic echocardiography. So fixed echogenic pericardium will be very characteristic. You can demonstrate pericardial thickening. ECG will show you low voltage, may show you atrial fibrillation, good number of times. Chest X-ray, pulmonary congestion, pericardial calcification is seen in good number of people. Superior vena cava will be dilated and even you will see cardiac seal Houghton may appear normal. and bilateral pleural effusion may be seen because of elevated pressure in superior vena cava as well as inferior vena cava. Here you can see a calcification very clearly seen. Calcification is seen. You can see a calcification very nicely. Again, you can see pericardial calcification. Very characteristic of constrictive pericarditis. You can demonstrate same, that is dilated superior vena cava can be demonstrable, ventricular chamber, pericardial calcification, etc. on CT or on MRI. Thickening of pericardium, calcification of pericardium can be demonstrable on CT or MRI. These are dynamic study which will show you different parameters. I am not going into detail. Mainly you will have to differentiate cardiac tamponade, restrictive cardiomyopathy, constrictive effusive pericarditis, etc. Management is mainly for treatment of failure like digitalis, diuretic and sodium restriction. As far as constrictive pericarditis is concerned, pericardiectomy or we call pericardial stripping, remove restrictive pericardium. So complications of that pericardial stripping can be excessive bleeding, atrial and ventricular arrhythmias, ventricular wall can rupture, etc. can happen. Perioperative, you can get heart failure, sepsis, renal failure, respiratory failure, cardiac arrhythmias, quite common. So usually it is also the another word is utilized, decortication. Pericardial stripping, decortication, pericardiectomy. These are all the different words which are being utilized. Commonest complication which can occur because of constrictive pericarditis is right ventricular failure or we call congestive heart failure. So I thank you all for taking out time. I know your time is valuable and I appreciate you spending some time of it with me. I hope this lecture may be helpful. Occasionally this can be asked in your theory as a question. Occasionally you might see such patient in your everyday practice. If you are aware of such condition, you will be able to identify. So finally, will be going through other chapters in next lectures.